That was awesome. At the end of my talks, I like to do, sort of what I want you to take away with, and boy, that was it. Rained down.
That was Aaron who chose an amazing song, man. That was, yeah. Thank you.
Well, you have a beautiful voice, and thank you so much for sharing it with us. It's important, I think, that we feel, and you help us do that. Thank you. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Alaska Center for Spiritual Living. Thank you all for coming out today. I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but it takes some pretty hardy people to show up here with some of the weather we've been experiencing. It was supposed to be warm today. It was going to be like 20 or something, and I got up this morning and it was like 4 below, and I think it's finally above 0, but I don't see 20 on the horizon. I know that.
It's warmer than Fairbanks.
Oh, yeah. So, thank you very much for coming, and welcome to our center. Welcome to those of you who are watching on YouTube. If you're ever in our area on a Sunday during one of our services, I invite you to come and be a part of one of our services. I promise you that we will do our best to make you feel at home. So, welcome. The month of February, our theme is all of the colors of love. And we're going to be talking about love during the month of February. Today I'm going to talk about the love of God. I'm going to talk about an idea that sprouted in our Practitioner 2 class. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But that the idea is that all relationships are grounded and based on self-love. Number 2, I'm going to talk about how love can conquer anything. That love conquers all. And thirdly, I'm going to talk about, it's going to be an admonition. I'm going to ask you to love that which completes you. Notice I don't say who completes you. It's not a person. Love that which completes you. So all relationships begin with self-love. I believe that love, like everything else in the universe, circulates. It goes out and it comes back. You give it out and it comes back to you. It's all a big circulation. But sometimes things pop up that block the circulation. It constricts circulation. And there are several things that do that, but I think the single biggest one that I encounter as a minister, a pastor, is this concept, this very real thing of faulty BS. And that's what it is, faulty BS.
I want more information. Yeah. It's coming.
Belief system. What did you think I was referring to? Kim.
Time out.
Faulty belief systems. We embrace things that we are not good enough. We're too old, too short, too fat, not good enough in 100 different ways, and it is those limiting beliefs that keep us not only from loving ourselves, but loving others. And it's limited belief systems. The biggest one of those is, I am not worthy of being loved. And we get that. Maya Angelou wrote, this is beautiful. In the flush of love's light, we dare be brave, and suddenly we see that love costs all we are, all we ever will be. Yet it is only love which sets us free. A lady by the name of Lisa Coburn tells a powerful story. It opens in a smoke-filled room in a gentleman's club. She is standing next to a mirror, and she stands next to the mirror because she doesn't want to see her own reflection. She doesn't want to see herself dressed in a skimpy outfit and dancing before men. she doesn't feel that she is good enough to do anything else. As she is there in that smoke-filled room, the air is shifted as someone enters, and a man walks in a suit and a tie. He had a little gray at the temple, which made him look rather distinguished, she thought. And he came in and he sat at a table in her area. So she approached him and said, "Hey, would you like to buy a girl a drink?" And he said, "Sure." And she was surprised when he went up to the bar instead of her, and he came back with 2 seltzer waters. And they talked for a minute. She started to ask him the usual questions. "What you in town for, big guy?" And he didn't want to talk about himself. All he said is, "I'm here on assignment." But he wanted to talk about her. What do you want in life? Where do you want to go? What do you want to accomplish? And she was uncomfortable with that. It didn't feel right to her. And so she was really glad when she got the cue that it was her time to go back and get ready for her routine. And so she says, "Hey, I got to go, bud, but maybe I'll see you later." And so she went back to prepare, but she was shaken. She was shaken by the questions that he asked and what her answers were. For you see, all of this started a couple of years earlier. She was a sophomore in college. She was living at home. She was straight A student. She was doing really well. And seemed a nice enough guy, offered to give her a ride back home across town. "Oh, I'm headed that way anyway." "Sure, no problem." And so she went with him, and it turned out to be the ride from hell. He sexually assaulted her, and when he had finished, he told her that she was never to ever speak of this again. And if she tried, if she did, he would kill her family. And so she never spoke of that again. And she held that within her, and she felt dirty, and she felt shame. And she carried that. After a short period of time, she dropped out of school. And she bounced around, and on the outside, she was bubbly old self, but inside, she felt that she was crumbling. She met a guy, and he was really a nice guy, and he was great for her, Danny. And she thought that all of her problems were behind her when he proposed. And she said yes. And she thought, "I can be the best wife, and I can do this." But it didn't turn out that way, because she still felt dirty. She still felt flawed. And she thought, if Danny really knew, if he knew the real me, he would leave. And so before that could happen, she left him. And then one afternoon, she ran into one of her old friends from the college, and they were talking, and her friend said, "Hey, you know, it's kind of an odd deal," but she says, "I dance at this gentleman's club," and she said, "Really isn't too bad. Get up there and, skimpy clothes, and let guys buy you expensive drinks, which you don't ever drink." And she said, "You flirt with them, and the pay is great." She felt like that was the only thing that she was qualified to do. Well, as she got up to leave, the gentleman that had came in, with the gray at his temples, she stood up to walk by, and he said, "Young lady, I want you to know something. I want you to know that God loves you, and that you are here to do wonderful things." And it shook her. 2 days later, she quit the club. She had saved enough. Her friend was right. You do make good money. She had enough for the next semester, and she enrolled in school again. And lo and behold, Danny called. And he wanted to talk. And she made a very conscious decision that she was no longer going to live that lie, that she was going to open up and she was going to tell. So she sat down with Danny and she told him everything. And as she finished, she saw the hurt in his eyes and it hit her heart. But then she realized he wasn't hurt for himself. He was hurting for her. And at the end, he said, now I see why our marriage could never work. But he said, I want to give it a try. I want to go back and I want to try this again. Once she made that shift, once she made the shift, realized that that infinite source of the universe, that infinite intelligence, whatever it want to call it the God of your understanding, higher power, source energy, whatever it is, once she realized that that creative force absolutely loved her, she felt the ability to begin to loving herself again. And once she began to love herself again, then she could truly love Danny. Love is the basis of all relationships. Self-love. It has to begin with self-love. And I do want to put a shout out to our Prac 2 students. Let's see, how about earlier, Bob is here. Judy is here. I don't know where Stevie is. These students have stepped up and ripped off the scabs. They have explored every bit of their experiences so that they can be of greater service to you. And I just stand in awe of this group of practitioners, 2 students. Their academic work is amazing, but deeper, their heart work is even more amazing. And they are the ones that taught me that all relationships are based on true self-love. My second point is that love conquers all. When we can get to that place where we really can love ourselves and we can begin then to love others, we can find that that love is working for us and with us in everything that we do. Another story, a lady by the name of Natalie Garbian. Natalie Garbian was her name. It is an Armenian name. She was a junior in college. Everything should be perfect. This is her junior year in college. She was studying abroad, and she was in Paris. And what a wonderful thing to be a junior in college and in Paris. And, what a wonderful thing. And she was so sad. She was not only apart from her family and normal things of homesickness, but it was so much worse. The culture was different. The food was different. The clothes were different. People were different. She was a master of language. She spoke French as well as Armenian, but everything was just too different, and she felt so much alone. So one Sunday, she called her family, and we had a great chat with them, and it was so good to hear their voices and connect with them again. But it was so hard then when she hung up, because she was once again alone, and she was walking through the streets of Paris, and she walked by the Armenian church. And she had walked by it before several times, but had never gone in, and she could tell that service was getting ready to start, and she thought, well, maybe it'll feel good to me if I go in there. It'll be something familiar. It'll be something I can connect with. And so she stepped into the church, and it was like being back in Florida with her family. It was just a wonderful feeling of connection. And she sat there, and she saw an older woman come in the back, leaning heavily on a cane. And the older woman came in, and And so Natalie invited her over. She motioned her over, and she asked her in Armenian, "Would you like to sit here?" And the older woman shook her head and sat down. But Natalie just felt compelled. The service was great, but she kept looking over at this older lady next to her, and she just felt this terrible connection to her. It was this powerful thing. She looked at her, and she looked at her, and finally the older woman noticed that Natalie was staring at her, and she finally said, "You're not from this area, are you?" And Natalie said, "No." She said, "I'm from the United States." And the old woman said, "Oh, yeah." She said, I had some family, I had some nephews that moved to the United States years ago. We've lost touch with them, but I know they were living in Florida. She said, "Oh yes, I remember. It was Sarkis and Decrum, and when Natalie heard those names, it welled up inside her, and she finished and she said, "And Era Garbian is my father." And the older woman smiled, and she said, "Azdusko Kords," Armenian for "it's God's work. I am your great aunt. We are family." When we open ourselves up to love, wonderful, amazing, miraculous things can happen. On a different vein, I'm going to really shift gears here. There was a guy who had always wanted to go to the Super Bowl. He just, that was his love and life. He wanted to go to a Super Bowl, and he finally got the opportunity. He scored just a phenomenal ticket, like on the 50-yard line, just high enough you could see over the players and see the field. It was like practically being on the bench with the players. It was just beautiful, and he was so excited. He got there hours early, and he sat there, and after a while another guy came and sat over there, but there was an empty chair between him, and he thought, "Man, that's odd. There's an empty chair at the Super Bowl at this location." So finally he asked the guy, he says, "Hey, what's the deal with an empty chair here?" The guy said, "Oh," and he says, that's my wife's chair. She would have been here today, but she passed away." I said, "Oh man, I'm sorry. Sorry for your loss. That's terrible. Couldn't you find, somebody else, family or friends or something to take the seat?" And the guy says, "No," he says, "they're all at the funeral." See, I was going to do good feel stories, not jokes. I just couldn't resist that one. My last point is it's a charge for you to do that which completes you. Not necessarily, not someone who completes you, because if we're looking for completion from outside of ourselves, then we're into a codependent relationship. We have to find that self-love first. And we have to watch out for the dangerous trap of conditional love. I don't know where. I think it maybe goes back into the Puritan traditions of, I'm not sure where, but in a lot of Western culture, in American culture, conditional love seemed to be the way to discipline kids. I will, only love you if you act this way. I will love you if you do this. And we put strings on love. And when we put strings or conditions on love, we lose all the meaning of what love really is, and we lose the ability to love ourselves in spite of our faults, in spite of the things that we do wrong. But when we can get past conditional love, when we can get past the strings that are attached, and we can have true unconditional love, then we can authentically love someone else. And then we can stop out and we can do something more meaningful in the world. Denzel Washington said something that I found was just really profound. Don't aspire only to make a living. aspire to make a difference. Don't aspire only to make a living. Aspire to make a difference. My feel-good story is about a Muslim girls basketball team. They were called the Salam Stars, and it's an all-Muslim girls varsity basketball team from an Islamic high school in Milwaukee. And I think most of you know me well enough now. I am all about teamwork. And we have some phenomenal teams here in our center. And if you're not a part of one of them, I invite you to step up and volunteer, because it's an amazing thing to be a part of a team. And this Muslim girls basketball team, they dress in traditional gear. You see they have very conservative clothing. Modest sportswear. They wear hijabs in all the time, and they are sometimes made fun of by other teams and whatnot, but they just let their record speak for themselves. Last year they were 14-4. And they're not the most talented group. They're not the tallest group. They're not any of that, but they're a team. And what really caught my attention of this, to motivate themselves, the girls have adopted a team motto: more than the score. It's more than the score. And this is their captain, said, it's how you work together, the hard work you put in, the commitment you give to the team, and the way you play on the court. No matter how good or bad the team is, you play your hardest. I even like that picture because we have the coach in the middle, and the coach is not wearing a hijab, but she does have the more conservative gear on, the athletic gear on, modest clothing. There's a young lady by the name of Marie Rose Belding. Today she's 24, so I backed that up. She would have been 18 when she started a nonprofit, and it's known as MEANS. It stands for Matching Excess and Need for Stability. She was volunteering at her local center, and as I read this story, I couldn't help but think of our things and how we help fish, and we collect food for it. And they were having a food drive at her church, and they ended up with some excess stuff, and there was no place they could do it. They had been donated, I don't know how many, I think like 1,000 boxes of mac and cheese, but it had an expiration date on it, and it was reaching the expiration date, and before they could find a home for it, it all expired, and they had to end up throwing it out. And she thought, what a shame. Well, she's a young gal. She's like 18, and evidently young people today use dating websites and stuff to, I don't know. We didn't do that in my day. I don't know. But the technology that was involved, and she thought of that technology, and she thought of her friends. So what she did is she created this MEANS, and it's based on dating website technology. And it's where soup kitchens and food pantries, food banks can put their needs up on a board, if you will, and then places that have excess food. Sometimes it's restaurants, sometimes it's hotels, sometimes it's grocery stores. And the excesses that we read over that were absolutely unbelievable. But they can post it on there, and then they match each other. I mean, it's really this great idea. Today they have over 3,000 soup kitchens and food pantries on their list, and a like number of giving organizations, people that will give to it. And it all came from this 18-year-old girl's idea. She's now 24, she's graduating, she's going on to medical school. But she took an idea. It was something that she believed in. It was her passion, and she did it. The entire organization now, I think they do have an executive director, but all of the actual work is done by high school and college kids, volunteers. And they do this matching. And you can do things like that. The conclusion today, the thing that I want you to take apart, since I can't sing like Jessica. This is a quote from Ernest Holmes. As light overcomes the darkness, so the radiant presence of love and peace dissipates fear, hate, and confusion. Again, as light overcomes the darkness, so the radiant presence of love and peace dissipates fear, hate, and confusion. And so it is with this understanding of the importance and the presence of love in our lives that I ask my colleagues, the practitioners, to join me in surrounding our congregation, our city, our state, our nation, the world in love. And know that as we go through this thing called life and we experience the appearance of separation, that the absolute truth of the matter is that each and every one of us are beloved children of the Most High. Each and every one of us are children of God, and we have been made in the image and likeness of that infinite presence. And that image, that likeness is one of love. And so we can step out of conditional love, we can step out of codependency, and we can move into true, authentic self-love. Then we can love one another. And the divisions can fall away and are replaced by unity. They're replaced by wholeness. They're replaced by all of the things. So the things that we experience, that we worry about, lack and limitation and not having enough, become secondary when they're replaced by the love of God. The other things, our health, we can know that we all have, at our essence, pure health. It may mean that we have dis-ease, but beneath that dis-ease, there is perfect health. And it is that perfect health that is operating at this and in every moment. And we know that that very love, the love of God, triumphs over all of everything. It can connect people over vast distances, over great lengths of time. That there is nothing more powerful than the love of God. And so we just give thanks. We give thanks for our awareness of the presence of love in our lives. We give thanks for the presence and our awareness of our own greatness. We are worthy of love. And so we just give thanks, we let it go, we let it be, and so it is.